Liberation Day is past, and we have officially been liberated from all of our gains and apparently from common sense. Tariff Palooza was so wild that we even imposed tariffs on uninhabited islands near Antarctica. That is not a joke. It is something that actually happened. What is the Trump administration planning? Why are they doing this? What will it mean for markets? We know that gold has absolutely skyrocketed while Bitcoin has dumped, usually not a sign of healthy economic things to come. I'm going to unpack all of this with Yago and, of course, Dan from Chart Guys on the back half. Let's go.
Let's go.
What is up, everybody? I am Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Might have to rebrand myself to the Wolf of No Streets because I have no idea what the hell is going on. And so apparently I need some new streets to live on. Yago, I'm sure Yago loves these tariffs. He's a huge fan. Huge fan.
I mean, to be honest, I don't really care all that much. It's not like I'm expecting the Trump administration to be an awesome administration. This is not a problem that we're going to vote our way out of, which is that, democracies vote for large, incompetent, and stupid governments, and stupid governments do large and bombastic things. And Trump is just better at it. Better. He introduces more drama. So, look, I mean, tariffs are very obviously poor economic policy. Are they good? Geopolitics to fight the world with. I mean, the United States taking on the entire world seems maybe like a poor choice. But what we really care about is we care about Bitcoin. And I think this is great for Bitcoin.
It wasn't yesterday, but I agree with you that long term it should be. I was watching this kind of passively yesterday, and I was on board for a while. He was kind of, calmly talking about reciprocal tariffs and it would be fair trade and all of these things. Then he hit us with the big board. I don't know why they didn't get the guy an easel. Like, he would literally stand in there holding it, and I started looking at these numbers and they just seemed absurd. I mean, Cambodia, 49% tariffs. You look up here at Vietnam, they apparently their USA discounted reciprocal tariffs, 46%. Of course, these are all the countries that manufacturers had to move to after we attempted tariffs on China last time in 2018 to 2020. And China, if you remember that, when we had the trade war with China last time, it lost us jobs. It didn't increase our manufacturing. And the United States government had to give our farmers a $28 billion bailout because China had reciprocal tariffs on soybeans and pork. So we've learned this lesson before, and that was only one country.
Yeah,
we're just taking this blunt force instrument against literally everyone. I don't understand. Like, tariffs can be highly effective if they're targeted and narrow and brief.
The United States in its history has 3 times introduced significant across the board tariffs, and each time it did that over the last 100 or close to now almost 200 years has resulted in the most significant that kicked off the 3 most significant recessions and the Great Depression.
Yeah, smooth Holly.
Yeah. but this time it will be different. This time it will be different. No, I'm actually dead serious. The reason it will be different this time is not that the United States economy won't go into a recession. It's likely to, there's like a good chance that will happen. But the reason it's different now is because ever since the Great Depression and the introduction of the Fed as an active participant and the Treasury as an active participant, the solution to problems of this kind is printing dollars. And so what we're going to more likely see in a significant drawdown in markets and another deep recession is we're going to see the return of inflation.
Okay. I just want to dig more deeply into these actual tariffs because some of this may be conspiracy theory. I don't know, but I kind of went down this rabbit hole and it's a good time at the very least. did ChatGPT come up with Trump's tariff rate formula? People have been able to exactly replicate it as if it was a fresh idea from AI, but that might not be my favorite. I think my favorite is this one. Just figured out where these fake tariff rates come from, because, by the way, these tariff rates on the chart are not accurate. Like, objectively, they're false, right?
They have no
reciprocal tariffs
basis,
have no basis in actual tariffs. What is going on? Yeah. They didn't actually calculate tariff rates plus non-tariff barriers, as they said they did. Instead, for every country, they just took our trade deficit with that country and divided it by the country's exports to us. So we have 17.9 billion trade deficit with Indonesia, for example. Its exports to us are 28 billion. Divide those 64%, which Trump claims is the tariff rate Indonesia charges us. What extraordinary nonsense this is. Okay, enough beating up on them. I think that there is a strategy here, maybe. But I've heard two arguments from the same people, and they're wildly conflicting. One is that this is a great negotiating tool. I do believe this, by the way. A great negotiating tool to create free trade, because everybody will be terrified, so to speak, and they'll all get rid of their tariffs and there'll be no tariffs. Great. But the same people who open their mouth saying that are also the same ones saying that tariffs will eliminate the need for the IRS. You'll have an external revenue service because we'll make so much money from tariffs. This is Lutnick said both of these things, if anybody's wondering. So you can't be saying it's a negotiating tool to get rid of evil tariffs and also praise how amazing tariffs are going to be for the economy at the same time. And by the way, it's not external revenue, you idiots. If you put a 25% tariff on China, that tariff is paid by a United States company to United States Customs, not by a Chinese company. I did a poll on Twitter and like 40% thought that the Chinese company paid the tariff.
I'm loving how worked up you are about this, Scott.
It's been pissing me off all morning.
It's almost like you have no choice but to suffer through this because you live in America.
God bless America. Okay, let's get back to the point, though, about Bitcoin, right? So obviously you said it's good for Bitcoin. That's something that we need to dive more deeply into.
Yeah, look, so I would say the following. There's a lot of drama. And Trump is fantastic at generating that drama, and the drama might be great for negotiation. But what I see is a lot of people are like joining this team, the anti-Trump team, or joining the pro-Trump team. And like you say, if you join the pro-Trump team, you have to be in favor of all of the nonsense they're talking about. And otherwise, you have to be in favor of all the nonsense on the other side. But for mental health, for living a life full of truth, and most importantly, for making good investment decisions, what you really want is to be detached from all of that noise and focus on reality. And in reality, there's one thing here which really matters, which is that this is going to generate significant hardship in the US economy. It's going to generate even worse hardship in every other economy. And that is going to mean a massive global print. It's not just the US and the Fed that's going to be printing. China's going to be printing. Europe's going to be printing. Japan's going to be printing. The UK is going to be printing. Everyone is going to be devaluing their currencies. And we're already starting to see that in the M2 numbers. And I suspect that we're going to start feeling the impact of that in the markets in May.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm reading the comments. People are telling me I'm wrong about how tariffs work. I mean, it's literally fact. I mean, a tariff is a tax that the U.S. company pays on the good coming in from China. And now I'm being called a libtard. So let me go into what Yago has just said. You can actually like Trump and think tariffs are fucking stupid. You don't, just because your guy thinks something is a good idea, you don't have to agree with all the good or bad ideas that they have.
Yeah. I mean, you don't even have to like Trump, right? Even if you like some of his policies, you don't particularly have to like Trump. I personally don't know Trump, but his TV persona is, is a bit of a heel.
Listen, I think if the plan here is chaos to get a better deal, I think it's brilliant. I do.
Yeah. And I think, look,
short-term pain for long-term game. Sure. I get that. But like by the way, tariffs will bring back American manufacturing. It's going to bring jobs back to America. Great. That takes 5 to 10 years. Yes. If it works, it takes 5 to 10 years. You think he'll still be president in 10 years? Okay, well, maybe.
It's a little bit more complicated than that. And again, I'm talking a bit out of my depth here because I'm not an expert on the entire US economy. But a lot of the inputs. Look, the US is an advanced economy, and it generates what manufacturers is frequently the highest value manufactured goods, right? Which means that the inputs are not raw materials, but frequently lower cost, lower processed manufactured goods. These could be things like steel, it could be refined ores, it could even be components. And what happens is when you start placing a tariff on the inputs to your production, that actually hurts manufacturing. And so, weirdly enough, this could, at least in the first stage, and the first stage can be years, this could actually shrink US manufacturing.
Yeah, of course, because you can buy American made, which is an amazing idea, except for that all the parts in that American made car are coming from China, Taiwan, Vietnam, and other countries all over the world, and Canada. So it's not like all of a sudden there's an American producer ready to step in and fill all of the demand for those things. Once again, I think it's got to be a negotiating topic here, but to pretend that we can then replace the IRS with external revenue, which is just revenue coming from American companies passed on to the American consumer, is kind of nonsense. And to be quite honest, I was almost on board until the story I mentioned in the beginning. Nowhere on earth is safe. Trump imposes tariffs on uninhabited islands near Antarctica. I mean, this is not a joke. Like, it's on
it
the chart.
does reduce your confidence. It does reduce your confidence that this is a well thought out scheme.
That's right. Like, you literally had like news. It's like Liberation's Day here, but we're going to push the press conference to 4 because we have no idea what our tariffs are going to be, and it's 1.
Yes. Look, I mean, there's 2 stories you can tell here. One story is this is brilliant, right? The Trump administration and Trump himself are basically trying to convince the world that they're in a knife fight with a crazy person. The last thing you want to do is be in a fight with a crazy person. Right. But that's a really, really great story. But frequently, it's much easier to just look at the facts and tell the simpler story, right? Occam's razor suggests that what we're seeing as a deep 4D chess to convince the world that you're crazy is just simply incompetence and a lack of attention to detail.
Yeah. And in the meantime, gold is absolutely flying, which is generally not a good sign. It basically made it to 3,200 yesterday. Now it's backing off. There is an argument that the first reaction markets have is usually the wrong one. So I bet gold dumps now and stocks do fine and Bitcoin rises.
Well, look, the last time that gold was on a rally like this was started in October of 2008. And it was only in March of 2009 that stocks started to recover. So that can be a long process. Now, gold actually has been rallying for several months now, so we're well into that process already. But yes, the degree of global uncertainty is, for the first time really in 16 years, driving people to gold. And that and what happened last time was the global financial crisis.
Okay, so we obviously have this narrative, which you and I both hate, but JPMorgan says Bitcoin's digital gold narrative is under pressure, highlights gold's strength in debasement trade. You can obviously take a look at the gold Bitcoin ratio. Bitcoin has been dumping against gold, had a rally, but all the way down. So from a price perspective, Bitcoin is not acting as digital gold. I've always made the argument that price is irrelevant. It can be a superior version of gold without trading like gold. But if you are looking at the comparison, Bitcoin is not rallying on global uncertainty.
No, and I wouldn't expect it to. Bitcoin is still very much a nascent asset. I think that what makes it such an attractive purchase is the fact that it is, gold to be, right? So you don't have to pay the price of gold in order to buy a significant percentage of sort of the Bitcoin supply. You can buy a lot more of the percentage of the Bitcoin supply than you can buy of the world's gold supply. So, on a personal basis, I was buying in the lead up to yesterday's announcement because I saw that there was volatility in the market, and I thought there were one of 2 options. Basically, it was pretty binary. Either Trump was going to disappoint the world by having the kind of tariffs that we were introduced yesterday, like the sort of insanity that we were introduced yesterday, or he would disappoint his base by going soft. And And so the market was going to go one of two ways, but it felt to me like because of that, prices were pretty low in anticipation. And indeed, at the prices I was buying, is more or less where Bitcoin is now. So if Bitcoin continues to fall, I'm going to be extremely happy to buy. And I think that there is some possibility of that, right? We might go into the high 70s again. What I think is slightly more likely is that we've taken the hit down. The people have sold on the news, and that Bitcoin is likely to tread water for the next 6 weeks. And that is sort of why I think that we're going to see the impact of liquidity that is already flowing into the market coming in May.
Yeah, this gives certainty, whether it's good certainty or bad certainty. It was the uncertainty, I think, that we're generally rocking markets. Now tariffs will become normal within a week, and it won't matter. And to your point, I mean, we're trading back to prices not seen since 2 or 3 days ago. And it's not like this is some mega dump. I'll tell you what I was wrong about. Yesterday I was here and I was like, I think news is all priced in. Like everyone's expecting this crazy volatility, but everybody knows the tariffs are coming. But when you started hitting people with like 49 and 50%, I think, 25% on all foreign made automobiles, nothing on Canada and Mexico or Russia, curiously. It was just a weird day.
I mean, there's on the McDonald Islands, which is not even a place really, but not in Russia.
Tariffed. No, Russia doesn't get tariffed.
Well, maybe there's no trade with Russia, and so there's nothing to tariff. Maybe there's no look. I mean, it's possible that because there's no trade, Russia actually doesn't have a trade imbalance with the US, and so there's no needs to introduce tariffs.
Maybe you can unpack this for me. Bitcoin's hash rate, there it goes. Bitcoin's hash rate hits record high, yet price and activity tell another story. How important is looking at hash rates as a leading or trailing indicator for what price might do, and how important is Bitcoin hash rates chart in general?
I mean, I will admit that I haven't ever done an analysis about how well hash rate growth is a predictor. But what I can say, what you can say for certain is that there are a lot of people with billions of dollars at stake who have entire teams that are doing the analysis, and they believe that his teams have told them now is the time to invest in additional mining capacity. So it would seem at least that part of the market is bullish, and they are probably better incentivized than anyone to have a realistic view of where BTC is going in the short to medium term.
Yeah, we've always had this chicken egg situation. I'm trying to look at it and see if Bitcoin price follows, but it does at least say that Bitcoin's extremely healthy and security has improved, correct?
Yes. No, I mean, look, Bitcoin is generating about $4 billion in miner revenue per month, right? So its current security budget is about $16 billion a year. And if Bitcoin does appreciate significantly, that's going to go up to well north of $20 billion a year. So yes, it's an extremely significant budget. Just as a point of comparison, right? Solana, the security budget is also very, very significant with all of those fees, and it's at $3 billion a year or less.
I mean, if we think that Bitcoin's dumping, take a look at your favorite altcoins. That's Solana, right? Traded up to 136, down to 113. I mean, what's crazy is still every single time Bitcoin even sneezes, altcoins get like an extra 10% drop. It's been brutal out there for anybody who's not in Bitcoin and is exposed to crypto in general. Brutal.
Yeah. Look, I mean, there's. I think it's also going to continue to be. Look, the Ethereum, if you sort of look at the entire chart, has been trending down with ups and downs, but basically trending down.
This is versus Bitcoin.
Against Bitcoin, but for 8 years now, right? Over the last 8 years, there were only 4 months in which you could have bought where you would have outperformed Bitcoin. Right, that little you see that little dip at the little W dip. That was the only period of time where if you'd bought there, you would have outperformed Bitcoin. 4 months out of 8 years is not very good performance. So I think overall, especially now, as Bitcoin is being adopted by significant financial institutions, is being bought as a hedge by governments, and is likely to be adopted by the world's wealthiest, by the government of the world's wealthiest country, the United States. It's been crowned the king. It's no longer even worthwhile talking about these other systems as competitors to Bitcoin. I think the real race now is to what degree can they be complements to Bitcoin?
Which is why you're building Bitcoin OS.
Yes, and my sense is...
Did you see that I interviewed Hoskinson? We talked about you.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
What did you think of the conversation?
I thought, I mean, listen, people can think what they do about him. I understand that he tries to poke the nest, but when you talk to him, he just seems absolutely brilliant.
He is an extremely articulate thinker.
Incredible. Yeah. But I mean, he obviously believes that, in partnership with you, technically, that basically DeFi and everything that's on other chains can be brought to Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin can be the base layer. I mean, someone who was there for the beginning of Ethereum and who built Cardano, that people still even say, Cardano hasn't showed its full promise or delivered on all the things, and he's pivoting to building on Bitcoin, should say something.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more and more of that. And I think Charles has had a track record of being ahead of the market. He created the world's first stablecoin, was the founding member of Ethereum, launched one of the most successful L1 ICOs immediately in the wake of the ICO, like at the very beginning of the ICO period, and that became Cardano. He's been ahead of the game on a lot of things, as well as very technical things. Ouroboros, which was the proof of stake system developed by Cardano, is today considered one of the very best out there. So, I think he is an early indicator of the fact that even Charles, who was such a hater of Bitcoin, coming back to Bitcoin, is just telling us that and everything about this market is telling us that the world is waking up to the fact that this is a network effects industry, right? The network that is winning the network effect is Bitcoin, and therefore is likely to continue winning.
I love this comment. I'm going to bookmark this episode and relive it 12 months from now. 2 internet Bitcoin guys explaining how Trump will be wrong. He's rarely wrong. We'll see. Listen, come back in 12 months. I bet we won't have talked about tariffs for 11 and a half months.
Well, I mean, what do
I don't even know what right and wrong will be, to be quite honest. Because it's either like there won't be tariffs. Yeah, it'll be like there won't be tariffs, and we'll be like, see, great negotiating tactic, but you'll forget that tariffs were supposed to eliminate the IRS. If tariffs eliminate the IRS and it wasn't a negotiating tactic, I mean, this is the thing.
Look, I mean,
I'm not making fun of that comment, by the way. I agree.
I am looking forward to a world where 12 months from now, Greenland and Canada are part of the United States of America. Panama Canal is controlled by the U.S. There's a place in Gaza called Mar-a-Lago Point 2. There's a Bitcoin reserve. The world has dropped all tariffs against the US and taken 100-year bonds, and the IRS has been cancelled. I want to see that world, so I'm hoping that the gentleman is correct.
Oh no, tariffs! It's the end of the world. Orange man bad. Wow, I hate change. Why should the world have to play fair with America? Guys, that's good. Let them play fair. Maybe calculate the tariffs right when you decide what fair is, instead of just dividing two numbers and pretending that's the rate. But yes, I theoretically, I agree with fair trade and that the tariffs should be equal. I'm just not convinced that this path is actually going to get us there. But I do want to pivot really quickly and talk about this. Worth noting, House stablecoin bill advances in U.S. House with support of Trump Democrats. So now we have the Genius Act in the Senate that we already know passed out of committee, bipartisan support. Now we have the Stable Act in Congress. I don't understand why we need them on both sides, but cool. That has been approved 32-17 in the House Financial Services Committee and will go to the floor of the House. There are some nuances between the different bills, but very clear that stablecoin legislation is very likely to be coming. Actually, at 11 o'clock today, I'm interviewing Senator Gillibrand, who proposed the first Lummis-Gillibrand Act 3 years ago and the Stablecoins Genius Act. So I'm going to ask her about it. Should be interesting. Stablecoin legislation is coming. I'm starting to worry if it's going to be good legislation or not.
Well, look, I think a lot of people seem to be waking up to the fact that the best hope in the future for the US dollar as continuing to be the sort of like the reserve asset of the world, and by extension, the reserve asset of the digital world, are stablecoins. And they're an extremely powerful tool. Like nothing has driven dollars into the hands of regular people in countries outside of the US like the dollar, like stablecoins. The stablecoin market is completely dominated by the dollar. It's weird, right? Like European traders, Chinese traders, Indonesian traders, Brazilian traders, they're all trading the dollar with stablecoins. So that is a massive strategic asset to the US. And I think the US are going to do everything that they can to encourage that and to maintain the really completely dominant lead that they have.
I'm just questioning what can go wrong, an unintended consequence of stablecoin legislation. Like we just saw Mika, obviously, a few years ago. People sort of cheered it because it was some clarity, even though they didn't like it. Well, now you have Binance pulling Tether in Europe. You have Palo Arduino screaming that they have to have way too many of their reserves in crappy banks in Europe that are fractionally reserved. I'm hoping that we can learn some of those lessons in the United States and pass better legislation. But what if our stablecoin legislation says only Goldman Sachs, JPMorgan, BlackRock, and State Street can, issue stablecoins?
I mean,
I don't think we're at that point now, but I'm just saying, like, what if Tether gets completely cut out?
I wouldn't be surprised if there is a continued effort to sort of minimize Tether. But Tether's not going to go away, and Tether is an extremely useful tool. Because, Tether is a much more useful tool to the US than it is to Europe, right? I could definitely see why the Europeans would want to completely minimize the use of Tether, because it offers them very, very little. But for the US, for the entire Cold War, there was this regime in place which was called the euro dollar, which was basically a way for non-US banks to issue dollar-denominated, basically stablecoins, dollar-denominated credit on the basis of all kinds of assets. And it was a way that Russian banks could trade with Polish banks and with Nigerian banks using dollars, right? Even though it had nothing to do with the Fed. It was a completely alternative way of managing dollars. But it really helped cement the dollar status as the global reserve asset, even inside of the communist world, while that was still a thing. And Tether and sort of offshore stablecoins represent the same thing. At the same time, I do think that the US, like all governments, I mean, what do governments want? Governments want monopoly over power. That's sort of the primary driver of a government. Yeah. And so they are going to want to try and assert their control over the stablecoin space. And the best way for them to do that is to have US institutions issue it. And so what might be the interesting outcome of all of this is that the stablecoin ecosystem becomes less of a Tether monopoly and fragments more. And I think that might open up cracks into which decentralized Bitcoin-backed stablecoins will have a much more interesting opportunity to grow into. So we'll see. And I think it could be exciting to see more competition in stablecoin space over the next 2 or 3 years.
I still think the biggest missing piece here to wrap the conversation and everything coming back to Bitcoin is an incredible stablecoin on Bitcoin. It blows my mind that we haven't really seen that. Like, if everything is coming back to Bitcoin, I mean, we have Tether, I guess, on Lightning now, but like for actual adoption, like the most natural thing in the world to me is a very secure, hugely used stablecoin on the Bitcoin network.
Well, up until recently, we didn't really have the technology to integrate Bitcoin with other systems, with other layers, to build high throughput systems in Bitcoin. It's only now that those technologies are beginning to emerge. Really, it's this year, and most of them are still very, very, very early. And so I think in terms of investing, and also in terms of sort of as a developer or a builder, where to put your efforts, Bitcoin right now is the most interesting space in all of crypto.
I 100% agree with that. Yago, as always, thank you. I hope I didn't get you in the crosshairs of a bunch of angry Americans.
Well, I mean, I want the angry Americans to know that I love America, and I'm actually thinking of moving there. I'm currently working on making that.
So when I met you, just so people know, like we were talking about how like you like were smuggling gold out of South Africa, and you were looking to build a Bitcoin utopia in a country where you could buy a bunch of land and create your own government. Now you're like, maybe I'll move back to America. It couldn't be like bipolar.
My biggest hope, really, the number one hope that I have in terms of promises made, promises delivered, is freedom cities. Right? Trump discussed the idea of introducing 10 new cities in the United States with low regulatory environments, sort of like the Hong Kong or Shenzhen of the United States. And that could be a massive way of reducing the cost of housing, driving new innovation, driving growth, and driving experimentation. That is the key to prosperity. And I really hope that that is something that we see the Trump administration actually follow up on.
I love this. Orange man bad, but he's moving there. Guys, you can like a country and like not agree with everything that their president says. For fuck's sake, man. The American dream has nothing to do with a single politician. That's the beauty of America. They all become forgotten by time in a great country. God. Okay, enough. Yago, thank you very much. Everybody give Yago a follow. We'll be back next Thursday, right?
Thanks, Scott.
All right, man. Thank you very much. All right, as we move on here, just to clarify a few things, I was having a good conversation with Green Day Profits over here in the comments as Yago was talking. Guys, like he said, it feels like we're Trump bashing here every day. I'm a Bitcoiner. I bash politicians. Like, you guys don't remember what it was like here during the last administration? We bashed Biden's economic policies 10 times more than we're bashing Trump's. This has nothing to do with Trump. If you're a real Bitcoiner, like simping for all these politicians is super lame anyways, right? I mean, the reason that I originally got into Bitcoin outside of speculating to make money was because I actually believed that governments were fundamentally broken and I wanted another option. So if you expect to come here and me to get super excited about everything a politician does economically when I literally buy Bitcoin because I don't believe that politicians are good at economics, then you've found the wrong place and the wrong show. Sorry, not sorry, in the words of some millennial pop female singer that goes unnamed because I have no idea. In the meanwhile, obviously, Thursdays are sponsored here by LBANK, which is a global no KYC exchange, which means that wherever you are in this beautiful world that is tied by global trade, you can globally trade on LBANK. It's right there. See, Bitcoin USDT pair, which you can now buy at 82,300. It's a good price for Bitcoin, in my humble opinion. You can get 20 USDT sign-up bonus with KYC. If you choose KYC, deposit, get a 50% trading bonus, trade to earn up to 100% cash back, and get a referral bonus of 250 USDT. Check out LBANK. And now, ladies and gentlemen, back on stage, chart guys. Dan, I feel like every Thursday I've been gone and you've been here, but I haven't. It's kind of weird.
Last two, yeah. I've been the captain of the ship. It's great. I'm getting ready to take over permanently.
Yeah, he's the new host on Thursdays. It'll be you and Yago arguing about tariffs. You'll just be like, look at the chart, man. I don't care about your tariffs.
So just real quick, my opinion on tariffs, again, as Trader Dan and regular Dan are two very different people. And I don't care at all. I don't care at all. It's just always the price action. And, right now we're in clear daily and weekly downtrends in the major indices. And that's all I care about. So I know there's going to be a ton of volatility. I care about knowing that volatility is going to be increased as we get, the drip of headlines. But that's really it. So that's how I'm approaching the markets. There's no, macro bear perspective from me, because so many times throughout my trading career, there's been macro scenarios that you think something would happen and the opposite happens. And so I have learned to just take one day at a time, and any biases that I develop are based on price action trends. And I do the absolute best that I can to keep my politics and emotions out of my mind when I'm making trading decisions.
Did you expect this volatility with the tariff announcements? I was wrong. So everybody expected volatility. So I was like the counter guy. I was like, man, we all know tariffs are coming, whatever.
I expected that there would be volatility. This is more than I thought. I thought that the market was being prepared for the worst and that we would get a slow drip of things not being as bad as the market prepared for. And so that was incorrect. But again, you know, definitely risk off heading into the announcement just for the sake of, you know, this isn't the hill I want to die on, trying to be a brave bull. And yeah, just, you know, this reminds me a lot of 2022, just in terms of my approach, which is what I call turtle mode, which is just pulling inside my shell, being a bit safe, a bit cautious, not doing anything aggressive as a bull nor a bear, and waiting for the dust to settle a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. Oftentimes that's the best approach to ensure we don't get ourselves stuck in sticky situations.
So now how are you viewing this? I mean, all the volatility in the world, and here we are basically back to like 2 days ago, right? So, yeah. I mean, we got this nice move up, I think, that gave people hope into the news and then dumped it right back. But I mean, looking a little shaky in the stock market, you know, obviously it was like 5 minutes for the Qs to drop 3% or something after hours, right? So, I mean, markets definitely didn't like it, but we also have that first reaction is usually the wrong one, and then here we go, bounce right back to where you started and call it a day. But yeah, I mean, now we got some certainty, and maybe the charts will start to paint a clearer picture.
But Bitcoin's nice and clear for me. I mean, we shot straight up to resistance. We rejected. We were overextended into that resistance test, and now we're back testing support. And you know, nothing really changes as long as 81,000 is support and 89,000 is resistance. And obviously, the bears have a bit of an edge just because we're a lot closer to support, but Bitcoin, one positive has been that we've been showing relative strength comparative to the NASDAQ for the last few weeks, where, you know, the weekly time frame was a very similar setup to the NASDAQ. And, you know, the NASDAQ has confirmed the weekly bear flag and dropped to lower lows, and Bitcoin has not done that at this point. So we can say Bitcoin is positioned well, but I do believe the NASDAQ has to find a bottom in order for bulls to have any confidence. And where does that relative strength come from? You know, Michael Saylor buying whatever it was, 2 billion, definitely is an impact. Maybe GME is buying right now. That would have a little bit of an impact. So there's little things that can lead to relative strength. But as of right now, it's all about 81,000, and that level's in play as we are attempting to see a short-term bounce right now. But again, short-term, the key word. What I'm watching on the NASDAQ, and again, you know, I don't have high conviction in this pattern, is the potential of a falling wedge, where if we bounce today, you know, I'm not longing off this downtrend support, but if we bounce today, that's going to make me a lot more confident that this is a 12-hour falling wedge shaping up, where the bear breaks lack follow through. And that could, you know, essentially, this will be the most important pattern for me into next week if we bounce today and hold this downtrend support line.
It's funny. I'm looking at the Bitcoin daily chart sort of as you're talking, and all this volatility that we've had, but you still just have basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days that have either opened or closed right at 82,400 or 82,500.
Yeah.
We're on both sides of it, but it's literally the same price since here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there's the 6th candle that basically opened and or closed right there. And this one pumped and this one dumped right back down to it. So maybe right now we don't really have that much volatility when you look at it from kind of that perspective.
From Bitcoin, yeah. I mean, we're at the same price that we were at 2.5 weeks ago and the same price that we were at 5 days ago. So again, there's not a ton changing there. And the bulls are positioned well. I mean, in an ideal world for bulls, the NASDAQ is a 12-hour falling wedge. Bitcoin holds 81,000. And as the NASDAQ gets a bounce going from here, then, you know, Bitcoin bounces back up to 85, 86,000 into next week. Worst case scenario, obviously, is the NASDAQ continues free falling and Bitcoin breaks 81,000 and heads back to test the recent low of 76.5. So again, it's a time to be cautious in both directions, in my opinion. Obviously, the bears are a lot more comfortable on many charts, but it's just wait for the dust to settle kind of mode. I talk about how this is like a snow globe and you shake it up and you wait for all the little flakes to fall. Well, we just got the shake up and the flakes are coming down and we need to see where things settle.
I can tell you that the 10-year definitely just broke support. So I think we'll see what happens there and how much that matters StreamYard does this annoying thing now where I can't pivot back from screen you're sharing anymore without like closing one and opening the other. It's annoying. I mean, look at that. You had that clear head and shoulders up there, by the way. But then, I mean, if this starts to really fall, you got to think that the Fed's going to come in and start the burr. But I guess that could be either good or bad. But I think this is the biggest signal we have right now is what's happening with rates.
Yeah, big drop there. A couple in terms of altcoins, there's a couple that are still, you got XRP still battling the key support level just around $2, just under $2. You got Binance that had a really nice bounce. I'm watching for Binance to try and hold a weekly higher low here and just tighten up through a good bit of April. So as we know, altcoins in general, very weak, but there are a couple names that we're keeping an eye on. Just, I want to find the names where there's the potential that they hold up better, as essentially the names to keep an eye on if bulls are able to show back up, and we want to have the strongest names that we're watching. And so there's a couple out there, but obviously the vast majority are on the weaker side of things because there are some that did confirm their weekly bear flags, same as the NASDAQ. And I've been surprised at how similar a lot of altcoins charts have been to the NASDAQ over the last month plus, but that's where we stand right now. One more thing to talk about. I've talked about the metal miners a few times over the past couple of
miners.
Yes, the real ones, the ones taking out well, I won't say the real, you know what I mean. But just to update on what I'm doing, had a position on this bull break, moved my stop up here. I watched today play out. I exited half right before coming on live with you into this bounce. And now my half stop is under that low. So that's a way that, if I'm in front of the computer, I don't need to have a hard stop. And I just wanted to see, do we get any bounce? And I'm glad I did because it's been a really nice bounce over the last 15 minutes. So that's my game plan on the metal miners. But again, pretty much everything else, I'm just patiently waiting and I'm in no rush. I got a lot of cash in my day trade accounts, all cash. I got a lot of cash in my IRA and just waiting and seeing if the bulls are able to do anything. But again, you don't have to nail bottoms for there to be meaningful gains. It's okay to wait for the bulls to give us a reason to be looking long, and we don't have that reason at this point.
You've gone full Buffett, sitting on a big pile of cash.
I definitely was paying attention.
Guy's pretty smart.
I mean, it's also the kind of thing where, again, the gains from the 2022 lows in the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 in a span of 2 years were massive. I think the NASDAQ was up like 100% in 2 years. And so again, I tell my 73-year-old dad, now's the time to be selling. It's the first time I've ever told him anything. And it was, now's a good time to be sizing down your exposure in equities, because sitting through, a downturn when you're 73 is very different than when you're 53. And so fortunately he did so into the end of last year. We'll see if that's a good long-term decision or not. But again, the S&P 500 right now is only down, 10, 11% at most. And 2022, it dropped 26%. So we'll see.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, I'd prefer not, but
yeah.
Gotta be ready.
All right, guys. Give Chart Guys a follow. Dan, you can follow him obviously on X and check out YouTube for all of his other superior content, man. Thank you as always for showing up even when I'm not here. Much appreciated. Have a good one, Dan.
You too. Thanks.
Just a reminder, guys, like not a show about politics. We never talked about politics in the past until Bitcoin and crypto became inextricably tied to politicians and their policies. We only started talking about politics when Gary Gensler and Elizabeth Warren came on the scene. If you think that we're like saying something negative about your guy, like, you should remember, I literally got Fire Gary Gensler trending on X, and I think I had Max Kaiser on the show calling Elizabeth Warren a literally, not my words, like a cocksucking crack whore or something, right? Trump's doing some good things. Trump's doing some bad things. He's a human being. He's a politician. It applies to all of us. It's not my job to just like get on my knees and fillet somebody because you guys like them. Some people do bad things sometimes, make bad decisions. And guess what? My takes are often just as bad as their decisions. I look back and I'm like, did I really think that? That was stupid. Maybe in 6 months, we're going to look back and you guys are going to be dunking on me over my terrible takes on tariffs. That's the price you pay for showing up every day and sharing your opinions with the world. It is what it is. That's all I've got for you guys today. We'll be back obviously tomorrow with NLW for the Friday 5. All right, everybody, the Friday 5. Dragonflame misses the days when I was charting. Yeah, like I charted a lot, and you know what I found? Charts are cool, but nobody's going to use them the same way. And the problem is when you start telling people what a chart says, they come back at you 3 months later like, you said that the price was going to go here and I lost my family car. I don't really I get there's all these like signal groups that are cool and like people, there's great traders telling you what to do. But at the end of the day, the like ROI on telling people your opinion on where price is going to go is exceptionally low. We used to have fun, man. I thought it was clear that I was making jokes and we were just funny. And then people like make very dramatic, serious financial decisions based on a joke you make about a chart. And then you get blamed. So easier to just interview people and let them get blamed instead. That's all I got for you guys. Bye.